Don't get me started. Mike from around the world.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
How
How
are
do I
you?
sound?
You sound good, brother. A little bit
Keep it
louder.
going?
That's better.
Good, 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 good.
Great, great. Hey,
Where do we begin? Where do we begin?
where do we begin? You know what I told everybody during this waiting for you to come on? I said, danger zone. Wars are expanding. And I said, I'm going to ask Mike a question. Where are the 5, in your opinion, Mike, you can use wars, you can use earthquakes, fault lines, volcano dangers, you can use atmospheric compression, solar, whatever you want to do. Where are the 5 most danger zones on the earth or around the earth or above the earth, or 5 danger zones? What would you say they are?
Well, other than the obvious places, there are actually a few places I'm looking at. One is Micronesia, Argentina, the English Channel, Husavik, Iceland, and the Atlantic.
Micronesia.
Mm-hmm.
Where else?
Argentina.
Argentina.
Yep.
Okay.
English Channel.
The English Channel?
Yes.
And what's the other one too?
Husavik, Iceland.
Iceland. Is that the volcano up there? And
yeah, they have a few things up there.
Okay. And what's the last one?
The Atlantic.
Okay. All right. Tell us what this means, Mike. Start with Micronesia. Micronesia.
Micronesia is full of technology underneath the water.
What?
Argentina is a contention spot. So it'll likely be a launch pad. The English Channel is an invasion point that's been pinpointed, and quite a few, let's just say that they have some activity. And then the Atlantic, because of its instabilities. And this is outside of the things we know about, like the North Pacific Ocean, which is the activity is off the scales.
Right.
And, well, in fact, the entirety of the Earth is changing, which is why I'm developing that map. But yeah, those areas are not good areas.
So you're working, folks. Mike's working on a map that he's going to break out during the webinar. That's the first time we're going to lay eyes on it. We'll be at the webinar, and is it the new fault lines, or what I shouldn't say they're new, but the recognize a new advanced technology, and now that we know where more fault lines are, is that what this is?
Yeah, trouble spots in the Earth. The Earth is still expanding. It's still sucking up a lot of energy, radiation from that's galactic radiation, because we're being really pressed and crunched. And a gravity wave chart also is being developed. That won't be ready, though, until the end of December. And that's for some of the newer missions that are coming up in December. So, but we're so close, Pastor Paul, to that instability point, to that flashpoint, concerning what the Earth can actually take before it pops. And so there are quite a few areas that are, all the way around the ring of the Earth is quite dangerous. And one day, people are going to wake up with water right there by their feet. That'll be the water event. It'll be everywhere. And then followed by that, we're going to go through some drastic changes, right? The water event is almost guaranteed because of some of the external pressures are going to change how the Earth orbits, how it rotates, and the angle of its tilt.
Okay, I heard some of that today interviewing Gil Brazard, talking about the tilt, talking about the slowing down of the rotation. That freaked me out. So you've been saying that. Yeah. Okay. So Micronesia, there's techno stuff. Okay. Now wait a minute. What are you talking about?
Well, Pastor Paul, these times that we live in are quite different, right?
Okay.
And we already know about the war front that's building in the Earth. One thing that people are likely reluctant to cover, or they can't, is what's underneath the water. We're going to deal with more elements besides nations. We're going to have to deal with established breakaway nations. Let's put it that way. Not some ET from a different world. We're not talking about that. We're talking about things from here. But those things from here, just like a nation would, are finding, well, they're just going to make their move like everybody else is. I doubt that people are truly prepped for that.
No.
We're going to have to deal with other elements. There was a conversation that took place. Well, actually, it's taken place every month since the beginning of the year concerning military assets around the world and positioning, dealing with certain elements of this earth, because we live in a time, everybody knows about, well, most people know about the expectation of inbound objects, right?
Yeah.
What they may not know is that what accompanies all those inbound objects in or about that same time. And the one thing they may not have discussed is the age of man itself. Just like it comes through on a cycle, so does man mature in certain ways. Every, third or fourth generation, man reaches a new plateau or new step in his, how he, eventually gets to a point where nothing will satisfy him. And so we went from a point from seeing things on this earth a long time ago, seeing God's direct power, to a time of absence and development and culture and technological things, to psychology and sophistication, the legal things, science. Now we're in that age of science, going into the age of, once they announce certain discoveries, that's really going to boost things. And so you'll start to hear a lot of officials talk about these extraordinary things, but they're real. They're going to be real, not fake. And then, of course, when that happens, normally some destabilization breaks out because people rebel against government. Government is forced to change, and that's when this other element, 3 times they've done this on the earth, and they'll do it again. And we live in those days. Now, it'd be all right if that were fantasy, but we're facing something that's flesh and blood. We're not talking about angels. We're not talking about China either. We're talking about something else.
So are you saying, Mike, I guess that what I'm feeling like is that there's underground civilizations of humans or flesh and blood of some type of advanced or humans? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's kind of like some of the tribes. There are 2 old German groups of people who are still alive that were in World War II. They do not contact the rest of the world. They have one ambassador. They are not talked about. They're extremely smart, but they just totally broke away from everybody during World War II. They still exist today. They don't trade or do any of those things with us. They work with South American persons only. Okay. And but they still exist, and people don't know about them. So, but they're not from outer space.
No.
Right? So you're talking about breakaway civilizations.
Well, I kind of think, okay, maybe, look, I know that Hitler, a lot of people thought he died, but, I really think Hitler escaped and got into Argentina. And are you saying there's some Nazis or a breakaway group of Germans? That...
Not really Nazis. Not
okay.
Nazis. These
okay.
are people who kind of just broke away from civilization, kind of like some of the folks in New York who are rich, but they get burned out on life, and then they go live in the streets for the rest of their lives. But they're billionaires and millionaires, kind of like people like that. These are that group. But what we're about to face is what you can call them a waterborne people.
Right? What?
They never went to war, so they kept developing. And although it sounds weird, they'll be introduced. People don't know what they are. That's really going to shake some things up. That will also coincide with the dismantling of religion itself. And because one of the key points is this: if any of those extra things outside of what we have established as human beings were ever presented, it would kill our ego and pride and everything else. And then, of course, the way we operate is once one of our foundational trusted things is broken down, proven to be false, we start to doubt everything else. And that's normally when things like religion, many folks' religions, they'll break down. If a person does not have a strong relationship in Christ, they will begin, because they'll see this. And if when they do see this, they're going to start believing in a lot of things, Pastor Paul. Right now they don't, because they haven't seen things as a whole, right? But
Yeah.
imagine the world finding out about a couple of civilizations that they never knew about. That's been here this whole time, right? It's been in contact
Well, it
with
will
most
blow
governments,
people.
and
Mike,
you
it's
know,
going to blow people's minds, and obviously somebody knows about it. You're telling us about it, and so some of our leaders in the world, governments, and leaders, and they know about this. Waterborne people. I mean, breakaway civilizations. You're right. I mean, mind-boggling. I mean, it's one thing to find out about, some lost tribe in New Guinea or something, but you're talking about something a whole different, and a lot higher intellectual, technological advancement, maybe.
somebody who never blew themselves up, right? Think of people who, instead of going to war, they just continue to develop, right? So that kind of folks. And I know certain people are going to jump to the older stories. It's not these folks have been in and out of history for some time now, but we're not talking about some of the esoteric stories, some of the stories in the ancient stories that Plato shuffled around. We're not talking about that. We're talking
Right.
about something very real, right? And they occupy real places.
Well, what causes them to be introduced? What causes
Time,
them?
time.
Well,
As we think of it this way, every 3 generations, right, something happens to humanity. Humanity thinks differently, right? We think differently. There are concepts that we operate computers now today. You couldn't explain that to your great grandparents. You
no,
couldn't
you
do that,
couldn't. No, they
right?
would not.
Because they wouldn't have a concept of it. It's just like right now, kids are coming out with this virtual reality. Most people, they thought computers were of Satan. They did. They
Yeah.
thought the social security card was the mark of the beast and of Satan. So a lot of people wouldn't take that. But we take no thought of that. It has,
Right.
we keep that separate from our faith, where there are things coming out now and the kids are doing that we find questionable, because we know how it can break a person down. But these kids are built for a very different time. They're going to have to tolerate some very immoral things, still carrying on the faith. It's just like us.
Well,
A lot of people say, I wish I was back in the time of the apostles. When I thought about that one day, and I said, well, the prophets looked at this generation. They saw us a long time ago, and they envied us because we were the ones that didn't see Christ. But the apostles would have a hard time dealing in this type of environment, because everybody can speak. Everybody has their own knowledge. Everybody has their own opinions about everything. And to them, it would look like they stepped right into hell itself. Right? That's what it would look like, because things are so immoral and there's no discipline.
Well, you talk about things are lost. The technological advancements. I mean, this is amazing to me. I mean, I grew up with black and white TV. Okay, you had to get up and you had to turn the knob.
Yeah.
And you had to go outside and turn the antenna.
The round tube.
Yeah, the little round tube in the back. Okay. And all right. So I've lived through the invention of the calculator in the freshman year in high school, and the first electric typewriter my senior year, and then the word processor was a big deal. Now my 2.5-year-old granddaughter, they hand her an iPad,
and she knows what to do.
Oh, she's and I'm like, wait a minute, how do you make? She's 2.5 and she's operating.
That's right.
So there's advancement.
It's like animals have instinct, right?
Yeah.
Whenever we strive, let me explain this an easy way. This is people are going to look this up scientifically, but whenever we yearn to do something, we really expend a lot of brain power into doing something, right? When you have children, they're born with that natural ability to achieve it, so they can always carry on where we left off, right? So every generation is going to advance, every single one. It's just like we were adapted to a cordless phone, but then you had our parents that looked at it sideways, like, how do you work this thing?
Yeah.
They couldn't even, and forget about a cell phone. They wouldn't work that thing. That thing is so far out of touch with them. But I'm sure that kids right now, they have holographics that are coming out, right? I have a strip right in front of me right now. There's no glass, no anything. It's a monitor, but it's a strip. The same thing Elon has at his center. So it almost looks like a ruler, right? You put a ruler down and you have a computer screen that interacts with your fingers
So wait a minute,
without you putting anything on.
Mike, you're telling me right now you got a strip like this on your table, and it's a invisible screen is up?
Yes, holographics, but you don't put glasses on or anything like that. You can turn around.
Well,
It
how
looks
do you
like a ruler.
operate? Do you just use your finger in the air or what?
Yeah, you just kind of you smush it, fan it out, and push things away, and pull things back to you. You can still type on a keyboard if you want. There's a bar at the bottom. You kind of push it, and a keyboard comes out. But there's no keyboard. It just has light patterns on your desk. It looks like a keyboard, and wherever you touch, it's tracking your fingers, and so it operates everything. But it's quite efficient, very fast, right? Stuff like that is out now.
That's
when
amazing.
that comes out, and it's common to children, right? Then what about people will look at that and say, wow, that is extraordinary. But in truth, it's just a monitor. That's it. It is only a monitor.
But Mike, it comes out of nowhere. I mean, I got a screen in front of me, okay? So I got an iMac, right? I mean, I got a Mac computer, desktop, big one, 27 inches. I can see. But I'm moving it around with the mouse, the cordless mouse, and the cordless, thing.
Right.
But you're sitting there. You got one little strip like a ruler on the table, and presto, this thing just comes up, and you're moving your hand around in the air, and you can blow things out and part things off and move stuff.
Right. It's quite efficient because it's almost like working a cube, and you have you have 8 screens at your. You just flip it around and get to something, turn around, put something in a basket, pull something else out. But it sounds extraordinary, right?
Right.
It will not be extraordinary in a year and a half, or probably next year, because this was developed 6 years ago. 6 years ago, this was developed. This has been out for 6 years. It's just not been
released to the public.
Popular.
Just hasn't.
Well, it is. You actually, people can get them if they know where to get them from. They can get them, but they're still in this. I think they keep them in a developmental test state, kind of like back in 1990. I believe it was 90. I believe it was when the Zenith word processor came out for the U.S. Army. State of the art Zenith. It looked like a laptop, but it was by Zenith. It was white, but it was only a word processor, right? And so they made all of us have one, a word processor, and that was state of the art back then, right?
Yeah.
But now look, that was outdated so quick, right? Just like the big brick phones, so on and so forth. So imagine a civilization that never had a gap in its creativity, right? So it's quite commonplace. It's extraordinary to us because we've had large gaps, right? We formed nations or new nations like America, unfortunately. But I say that for a reason, Pastor Paul, because this map kind of reveals something that is, well, I hope people don't
so the map,
really take it the wrong way.
The map that Mike's talking about, folks, is the map he's going to reveal on the webinar. And you're saying you hope people don't take it the wrong way. So
because with with telemetry and telemetrics and all that good stuff, it's almost like you can see the topography under the earth, right? Immediately under the earth. And America has some very ancient structures that are vast. And this is actually radio data that comes from the earth. There's construction all underneath your feet, but it shows a layer of that construction. And so something is happening here. Nothing was an accident how things formed. It's not exactly what people think. You can get a couple bad folks who do some very bad things and then mess up the whole thing. But there's an influence here, right? Here in America. Well, it's kind of the reason why we have more violent storms than any place on earth. We have more volcanoes than anybody on earth right here in America. In fact, America is a place that has more of everything than anybody else. More jails, we have more violence, than anywhere else. All this stuff is, when you look at stats. So we have a force here. And with this, some of the parts of this map, I believe is going to be included because I don't see why they would pull that up. But we're dealing with something here on a day-to-day basis, something that people may not know about. But we're dealing with something old. Kind of like if a bunch of possessed people had some sort of ceremony to raise Satan in their home, you go live in that home, you may have issues that home, right?
You would.
So think of a whole continent like that. Think of the whole place like that. Just
Okay,
think
so
of the whole place.
we're talking about principalities. We're talking about demonic spirits. We're talking about
Some
bad stuff.
some bad stuff.
Yeah,
Bad stuff.
Well,
yeah. And it carries on, of course, you know. But
okay, so when I ask where's the 5 most danger zones, you took me to some waterborne creatures under the earth, an ancient civilization. But these aren't ancient civilizations. These are advanced civilizations. Breakaway.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, they're just like you and I. They never went to war. They never were.
Right.
They never went anywhere. Well, not just like you and I. I'm sure they believe in different things. But
right. But they're
they're
human. They're humans.
They're real. Yeah, they're real.
They're
real. They are real.
Okay. Well, let me swallow that for a few minutes and let me digest that and help me understand why is Iceland so dangerous?
Oh boy, Iceland is terrible, Pastor Paul. Iceland has it's old, number one, right?
Okay.
It's also used by NOAA a lot and other teams. They research things in Iceland, but it's the home of what's called a black volcano. It's the home of some very dangerous chemicals, right?
Okay.
Natural chemicals to the earth in concentration. Should that place ever start cracking too much, it's going to release those deadly gases all throughout the northern hemisphere. They estimate that it happened once. They estimate that it's on track to happen again. Here's the kicker, though. It could happen from now to this day, right now, any day we wake up, to the foreseeable future, because they said it should, with all the pressure and activity that's happening down there with the ice cores taken up and everything else, it should have popped by now. It should have blown by now, but it hasn't. It's just building up back pressure in those places. And so I personally expect something catastrophic to happen in that place. I do expect it to,
when you say a black volcano,
eject gases.
When you say black volcano, RoboMom just asked that question. I just seen black goo. Is this?
No, you're just dealing with a volcano that emits very dangerous, toxic gases.
Okay.
And some more stuff, right?
Okay.
So it's a different chemical mixture that comes out. So it's just not going to be good. It is, they have probes in that place. They watch it closely, Pastor Paul, because if it goes, the entirety of Canada is going to be affected, regardless of, remember, the jet stream kind of hooks, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to carry anything away. What's going to happen? It will draw it north. It'll freeze, which means it'll go to a lower altitude, turn around and come right through Canada and just eat up America. It's what it will do. The entirety of the northern part of America would be inundated with some bad stuff, really bad stuff. So we're dealing with that. This includes northern parts of Europe, Asia. They would also face it too.
So this volcano's huge, I take it.
Yeah, it's strong. It's not so much that it's one of these, monsters. It's just that it has a lot of material because it's so incredibly deep, right? That it has a lot of material. And obviously it's being fed by some pretty big channels that go in there. So if it ever started, it would stay that way for a long time. It would likely engulf the entire northern hemisphere in some black, sooty, poisonous stuff, right? So then anybody in the northern hemisphere, if it went off, they would not be able to see the sun. Now, they already know this because they track the chemical signature from, I believe it was many, many years back, but it stayed dark for 5.5 years. The northern hemisphere, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So interesting fact there, and we're not talking about the meteor shower that took place back in the from the 12 to 1300s, and then some other ones that took place where the Earth was darkened for 10 years. We're not talking about that. This is a separate event that left a deep chemical signature in most of your rock strata and in certain trees that died out, dead forests that they tracked, that they find out what happened to them. Lots of glass was ejected. Some of the animal bones, they had glass in the bones of the animals. Because ash, if you inhale ash, right, as soon as you start to inhale it, it gets absorbed by the body. It collects in the bones, and it will deform your bones.
Oh.
Right. So it's full of, shards and bad stuff.
Yeah.
So it deforms your bones. So it's important to have a mat with a ash environment. The most dangerous thing about a volcano is the ash. If you start inhaling that stuff, it may not take effect the first week, but the next week it will, and it will continue to do so until things are gone. And you already know, I think we're going to face that environment because there's a seriousness to the return of our twin star.
Yeah.
It's becoming quite serious now, and my goodness, the remnants of what leadership actually believes in is embedded in everything. It's kind of like the Statue of Liberty, right? People, they have no idea what that is. But it's amazing when you find out small facts about something like the Statue of Liberty. And then you read the Bible, it starts, certain places, or they just give you this it gives you the shivers is what it does. But you have a lot of people who dedicated a lot of places. Why? Why did leadership in upper echelons allow this stuff to happen? Because they know the story about the return of the Sagamore star system. They know all about it. They've seen things from it, and they want to know. One question that pops up is the same thing that I'll have to talk about one day is let's just say the life that people will have to overcome first. Something will come and directly fight their faith. Face to face.
Okay, so this twin star, of course, which we can call in Planet X or our binary system, and it's affecting waves of energy. You've talked about it for years now, the 5 waves of energy, and now you're telling us, of course, about these 17 events, dates that are happening in 2023, starting on January 5th.
Yeah.
So, as this thing, Planet X, or as this thing goes by. Is it going to wake up some of the volcanoes like the one you're talking about in Greenland, Iceland or Greenland or anywhere else? Does it have...
I'm sure it will. Yeah, I'm sure it will. With the government sneaky. Take the Sumerian text, for example.
Okay.
They found those in Nineveh, which is modern-day Iraq. 2,200 tablets were found at that time.
Yeah.
Since that time, the U.S. forces with England and Germany and certain other forces went up there, and they have 15,000 more tablets. They go with the first, and they did. England almost had a falling out with America because they didn't share them with the public, and because of course the British Museum houses the Sumerian artifacts. Right, but they didn't share with them. They were supposed to share with the world, and they did not. And what it does is it starts giving names to things, right? Because the first set of tablets you had a couple of people who translated them along with Zechariah Ascension, but we've since had supercomputers, right?
Yeah.
We've had, we have quantitative computers, and so what they did was they went back and looked at everything with all the Akkadian text that they found a lot of that, with the Sumerian text. With all your script type languages, and they found out exactly what it said, right? Exactly what it was doing. And coming to find out, the Christians had it right the first time, right? The Bible has it right. It has it right. But they took those ideas, and they know it's real. Yeah. They know it's real. So they took those ideas. Pastor Paul, what they're trying to do is, because they know about the Nephilim, right?
Yes.
They know about, or the Apkallu is what they call them, the Apkallu, the Nephilim. The Apkallu are still around. And these weren't, deities with powers or anything like that. They just live a long time. They get very old. In the Middle East, they were called Apkallu. And those Apkallu, they're still around to this very day.
Are they like the Middle Eastern Sasquatch?
They're people.
Okay. Are they giants?
Most are people. Well, they're offspring, right? But they're old. They're offspring, but they're old. They kept the ring going, right? Yeah. The Nephilim, the fallen. Yes. The whole group of the fallen never stopped doing what they were doing. Even in the Bible, it says that there were Nephilim in the earth before the flood and also after that. Right? And then you have this cryptic set of writings in the book of Daniel describing the bottom part of the statue that was shown to King Nebuchadnezzar that a lot of people try to ascribe to some shepherds or something like that. But clearly, the Aramaic Hebrew used is saying that the seed of humanity or mankind, right? The same seed that was mentioned with the fallen angels, that same seed, right? The woman being the womb, it said that, but this time they're not going to cleave or take a wife. They're not going to cleave one to another, right? They're going to do the same thing. They will mingle their seed with the seed of men, but they won't cleave one to another. And a lot of theologians, they say that's spiritual because, of course, you can't, in a big institution like that, you can't just go around talking about angelic things that nobody can see, because it leaves out, you couldn't call that scientific. The funding, nothing would be there.
Right.
But based on what I've seen in my lifetime, that is clearly saying that these things are going to continue. They have continued mingling their seed with humanity.
Yeah,
they have continued having offspring.
We really shouldn't be shocked by that. And that's your point is so well taken. It's like, look, it tells us that in Genesis 6. We know that the fallen ones mingled the seed with humans and created Nephilim. We know this. The Bible tells us that. And then it tells us it happened again after the flood. We know this. David ran into look, Joshua had to fight all these giants tribes.
That's right.
Right.
Which is that's like our primary resistive force.
Right.
In the earth, right? You look at some of the people in leadership, they don't know their kneecap from their elbow. So how in the world are they getting all these policies created and everything else? And if you knew some of these people personally, you know that their recall is not that sharp. They mix things up. So something is happening here. And it's just I can't tell anybody why. I just have a firm belief that in all areas of leadership, Pastor Paul, in just about every single country, you have these things there that are extremely smart. Right?
Are they sitting among them? Are they sitting in the meetings with them? I mean, are they?
Yeah. Pastor, I'm sure you've ran into folks that have talked about.
Yeah.
We're not talking about the black-eyed children, but the black-eyed generals and admirals.
Yeah,
I'm sure that you've heard that.
I have talked to people who say.
And when if you're around any of these folks, just let me give a hypothetical. Okay. If that were true, right? You actually got around some of these folks as soon. The one thing you don't want them to do is look at you. You could have your eyes shut, head pointed the opposite direction. You still tell because it's like being in a dream. It's the same. Your body feels like you're stuck in a dream. Is what it feels like, right?
When you make eye contact with them, you mean when you get eye contact with them?
If you're in proximity with them, you feel like you're in a dream, right? Now, when people make eye contact, if this were real and they made eye contact, they go into it's almost like an instant trance. It's almost like they can't get away.
Do they have some kind of ESP, or do they have some kind of power?
You know what?
Aura?
Here's what I think.
Okay.
I think they're just like us. It's just that their spirit is so hungry for something, right? You know how you feel a person if they're looking at you?
Oh, sure,
right?
Sure.
Certainly females, they know that feeling. Somebody's looking at me. That sounds weird if you're in a place. You're in a mall or somewhere and you say, well, somebody's staring at me. You turn around and look right at the person every single time. Yeah. But see, we don't even analyze that, do we? We don't analyze that.
No.
We just keep doing it, and we do it all the time. We don't understand what that is. Well, these guys, think of 100,000 people staring at you. You get that same feeling times 100,000. Right? That's what it's like. I think it's natural. Just think that what they carry is a little more intense.
Okay.
It's a little more desirous or lustful or something like that.
Yeah.
And but they're extremely smart.
It's like a sixth sense.
Engage,
it's like a sixth sense. It's like an unspoken word, but it's almost telepathic. And we all have a degree of it. I guess we probably should have had a lot more than that. We've probably lost it along the way because we haven't used it. But okay, here's a question then. So let's just set this on the table. So if Nephilim, and we know they did. Okay, we know in Genesis 6, it was before, after. We know there was the results of the giants. They didn't die when David killed Goliath. I mean, they didn't all just go away. Where did they go? I mean, they obviously they didn't just go away. So what you're saying is,
I think they went everywhere.
They went everywhere.
They separated themselves
so
from
they're
us.
still
is what
there.
they
They're
did.
still among us. They're still
The stories
among
about
us.
America. The stories about America. What George Washington found here and the troops he found here. What Lincoln talked about. All these presidents in the USA, you know, they print the patriotic writings, but as far as the other parts of their journals,
They don't
they
put
won't
it
deal
out.
with them. Washington had troops that actually had to take those troops and actually pull them out of certain areas because it was giants in those places. And the guys said they had no control over themselves when they met them. And then, of course, that's when another one that everybody knows back in the day met a green person. And the person was giving this individual was giving that person instruction. That's all they were doing. But they told him about some things, and of course, you know, those things came to pass. But another one was told too. And so, with all the stories that are right there in the they got them in the in vaults or locked away, but you can still access them because they're releasing things. Some of the best evidence for things like that, what this really was here, is to go back and look at some of what was classified, because they had most files classified. Highly redacted are the files that were let loose past in the 40s. You go to the records that they found prior to that, they're not heavily redacted. They don't, in fact, some documents have nothing redacted, and you get to see the whole thing. So, you know, you had folks back there that were dealing with them. They didn't call, like people have these encounters with wild folks, right? And they stink real bad. And they call them Bigfoots or something like that. Right? That's not what they called them back then, because they actually spoke to them, right? They say they couldn't interact with them. They couldn't play with them. They couldn't do anything. And they had a peace treaty with them, just like they have with the Indians. And the Indians had a peace treaty with them. But it started going sour because people got hungry over here, right? And competing for food with more folks coming in. Just imagine living in an illustrious land without competition. All of a sudden, you got a bunch of people pouring in, and boom, right? And so you're looking at a wild civilization, basically, which was pushed back. You know, we started competing with them. They were not high in number, and they got pushed back. Well, stories like that give it a more tangible feel to it. It's not so, you know, not like they make it on TV. This TV nonsense will get people in trouble every single time because people are trying to make money on TV. So they're going to throw in some wild stuff.
Right.
But regular folks, right? Do I think they're going to have to encounter this? Yes, I do. Yes, I most certainly do. It's going to come with the smells. It's going to come with the sulfur. It's going to come with the release of methane. It's going to come when the earth starts breaking in several different places. Those things will have no choice but to come out from where they are. It's going to force them right into our populace. And then we're going to have an issue, right? They have, what, 3 bodies? They got 3 bodies of these things.
Okay.
4 bodies, I'm sorry. All this stuff, just like this UFO stuff is being released, you watch, they're going to introduce to the world in a very different way. They're going to blindside the world and say, well, you know, I know you called it this. That's not what it was, right? I know you called that a direwolf, but that's not what it was. And they're just going to break it out like no big deal. Because they have to. Because as the oceans continue to become this place where you can't really stay there like you did, it's going to be a lot of stuff, you know, it's going to have to shuffle. Volcanic eruptions, the weather's changing, food is going to get kind of scarce. Some more. We haven't even had crop failure, right?
Yet.
To a degree where we have to have emergencies. So
I guess a question would be, okay, so remember, okay, when we talk about January 5th, folks, just for you to know, some of you are new, maybe it's your first night. Mike has told us that January 5th, there's going to be an event that's going to happen in our solar system.
That's right.
That's going to affect probably most of the planets, if not all the planets. It's certainly going to affect us too, but we don't know to what extent yet, and there's going to be 17 of these events. Now, Mike, also you talk about the 5 waves of energy over the years. Are this part of the 5 waves of energy?
No.
Okay,
no.
That's a different thing.
The 5 waves are coming from one central point that is just extremely dangerous. I'll say it again, a 1 inch by 1 inch, or let's see, how many was it, 10 centimeters or something like that, 10 centimeter cube was, this is theorized, of course, a 10 centimeter cube from a magnetar, right?
Yeah.
Moved a little. a Magnetar pulse came out and ripped off the top part of our atmosphere
Yeah.
in several different places in 2004. That same night, in the same week, in fact, they had emergency meetings on the climate. That's when all this climate stuff took off. Now, initially, right, the word climate change was not used. That was a word that they would understand the meaning, because if they don't mitigate the rest of the magnetars, right, that they can detect right now that are on their way and they cannot stop, if they can't do anything to protect the Earth's atmosphere, then it's game over to them, right?
And
So
these five-
that causes, every time one comes through, it causes climate change. That's what it was
Okay.
all about. It wasn't in Al Gore. The people started making money off of this,
Yeah.
right? They did so politically. It also came around during a time when politics was a very different creature. And so you had a lot of people that got out of control with this stuff, and it took on a life of its own. And now you can't even tell people the history of where it began. People can go look it up. They can get the Magnetar designation. They can look at the dates and times and see who was involved. They can see the emergency meetings. And that's when all this climate change stuff broke out, really hit, mainstream. But now it's so far gone past while it's taken on a life of its own. And people say, yes, it is climate change, because look, those ostriches are doing it. Did you see that? The cows did it, and this is doing it. It's our cars. We have to go electric. And so what they're doing is utilizing that to make changes.
Yeah,
in
I
the
mean, we
world.
know that's just to make policy changes, and maybe I believe in transfer of wealth from one group of people who have an industry into a new group of people who wants to receive the wealth from this other group. I think it's all policy. It has nothing to do with the real waves of energy. It's you're saying that really is what affects what we call today climate change or climate or global
That's
warming.
right. Because back then they studied the cycles of ice ages. In 2004, they said, well, maybe this was the component that made the that change in the climate really balloon its numbers. In other words, it happened real fast. And they were looking for that cause. What made us freeze so quick? They could never find it. And so this Magnetar in 2004, they thought that was it. They still think that's it today. Right? Here's the thing, though. What you remember when I said that thing was coming through August 17th?
Yes.
You remember all the explosions that took place August 17th?
Yes, I do.
Now, there were chemicals. It's kind of like epoxy.
There was all over the world, factories were exploding.
That's
chemical
right.
plants. And you said that this wave messed with the molecular makeup of these chemicals.
That's right.
And
That's right.
I mean, it was, folks, you guys remember this.
That's right.
Reported this. I kept reporting all these factories blowing up everywhere, and they didn't know what was causing it. And Mike, you said you said before it happened it was going to happen, and you told us the exact day, August 17th. And then, probably about the next 2 weeks, we had this unbelievable amount of plant explosions.
That's right. Because when you have high-speed particles coming in like that, right?
Yeah.
And they knock the nuclei. They knock the nuclei out of material. It changes what that material is. It's kind of like having two containers of epoxy, and all of a sudden both get hot, like somebody mixed them, right?
Yeah.
You change that chemical composition, then that non-volatile substance is volatile. And so with all these different changes, there were certain.
A microwave, look what a microwave
that.
does to anything. I don't care what you got, put it in the microwave, and it's going to do something. If blow up or I mean, I accidentally one time, I don't know, I was an idiot, but
you change things.
I wanted to boil an egg one day, and I thought, well, what if I just put it in the microwave?
Maybe that smells so bad, because I did it too. I think everybody did that, Pascal. Don't worry.
Okay, so all right, so Mike, let's you gave me Micronesia, you gave me Argentina, the English Channel. Let's go to the English Channel, because what in the world would be so dangerous about the English Channel?
That deals with war, specifically cyber theft and everything like that, right? They're vulnerable.
All the cables are running underneath.
That's a vulnerability. It's also a place that if anybody were, now it's heavily guarded, but if somebody were to get in there, which they could, because there are different caverns and cave systems around that place. So if anybody ever got in there and they, had some nefarious mindset, it's just not going to be good. There are nuclear facilities over there that are not very well protected. right?
Yeah.
There have been people trying desperately to get someone to hear because they have a problem with terrorism, Pastor Paul, and it's not too hard for a terrorist. I can almost see this happening one day, that those facilities are going to be compromised because they don't believe. It's almost like if you tell certain people, that your preparations have a flaw, they get too prideful. And they'll say, well, we're not going to listen to any of that. The U.S. did that twice to them. And they said, well, we're not listening. We're not going to. They didn't even take the call, right? They stopped taking the calls because it's almost like they were in a state of arrogance. But now we're in that same state of arrogance. In other words, we're not listening. We think we know it all, right? We think we have it all planned out, that our plan's going to work. And I wish they read that part of that Bible when they said nations in distress with perplexity. Now, if it just said they were distressed, okay, we can handle that. But not distressed with perplexity. Because if you're perplexed and that's why you're distressed, then you have no answer for what just happened.
Right.
They're going to have no answer, no scientific answer, no explanation, no nothing. They're not going to have anything. And then with all these vulnerable points, Texas is another place. In my opinion, Texas is set up wrong. They need to make some changes quick. Right? There was because
of the oil, because the oil wells, or
well,
what?
Not only that, but we have nuclear facilities, we have oil, we have transport tubing going down in there, we have all those main valve ports in the Gulf, right?
Yep.
That go straight up in there. So realistically, something could happen in the Gulf, and in the heart of Texas, it would blow up, but it would be fed from gases in the Gulf. So you have issues like that. And if we're too arrogant, now we're having earthquakes in places we shouldn't have earthquakes in. And if Texas gets hit with the wrong earthquake, a fire is going to start below Texas. Right?
Yeah.
It's going to start blow there. That makes me nervous because there's already a fire in Texas.
Okay, so
there's already one.
Okay, you remember the Deep Horizon? You remember when the Deep Horizon blew up, and that pipe way down there, where the pipe was coming up out of the bottom of the ocean, broke off, and it was just pouring oil.
Right.
There was no way to stop it, and it took it took months to figure out a way to shut that down. Do you remember whenever the oil wells in Kuwait during the first Iraq War, how they set them on fire and these things were just burning?
Right, I was right there in the middle of it.
Okay, you were there. Okay, so it was difficult to put those out.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying if somebody dropped a dirty bomb, let's say, or somebody dropped a nuke, maybe not a massive nuke, but a big enough nuke, could it actually cause the pipelines that feed?
Yes, it could. Because they're not battle hardened, right?
Right.
And that's a big issue. Even the ones going, you go south through Fort Hood, Texas, which used to feed off, it's like Babylon 29475 or something like that. Anyway, that if those places get hit, save for Fort Hood, because it was already hardened. But it's no good to harden Fort Hood, Texas, as far as what's underneath the ground and not the other places. Right? If the other places have a rupture in the ground, Pastor Paul, and it ignites, now keep in mind there's already a fire underneath Texas. Hopefully everybody knows that. There's a fire that will not go out. It won't go out in Texas. It's much like PA, except this one, right, is from some sort of it must be emitting some petroleum or gas or something like that. It won't go out. It's very deep. It's already a hole there, but the hole is red in the evening hours. It's red. It's just lit up. So they already have one fire. My personal belief is, I can't prove this, but I think that's from magma. I do. I think it's from magma.
Okay.
I don't think that's going out. So we have a magma expansion event right now on the Earth, and all the magma is just building up an enormous amount of pressure in the Earth, forcing everything upward. Right. Yep. Temperatures are going up, so it's melting more rock. Texas has that problem. As stuff starts to ignite, they're in trouble. New York's the same thing. It's a mega caldera below, I'll call it chamber. It's a big chamber of magma sitting below New York City, right? Now, it's sitting below to a point where NOAA estimated that they say, given the activity we have now, it will take about, a couple million years for the Earth to shake enough before it breaches. But we know how that goes. That was calmed the public because somebody at the New York Times leaked that, and they shouldn't have. That was a new discovery. It's kind of like that one of the oceans I talk about familiar. Somebody leaked out a story with real data on one of those oceans, right? And how big it was. It was enormous. You could fit all of our oceans into it, right? That was just one. So somebody leaked this stuff out, but New York has an issue. If they have the wrong tectonic movements, right, it can actually crack the ground, and that magma is coming up right underneath
In New York City. New York State.
And that's right. So we have a lot of problems, like Washington State's another place. They have a lot of magma underneath that place.
Well,
Right?
yeah,
That
they got
goes all the way down to.
They got volcanoes, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens.
Yes, sir, they do.
Mount Shasta.
Yeah, and they're very ancient, but they're all starting to show activity.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
Yeah.
They're starting to show activity. So we know the Earth is having some issues, and we know that historically, we know something is coming in. Right? Won't get into what it's named. Something is coming in, and all these pieces are lining up, which is why these places I mentioned, these are strategic places that, for example, let's take Micronesia. Micronesia, they do a lot of underwater research there. There are 2 laboratories underwater there, right?
Okay.
And they do a lot of stuff there. Now, but see, this same thing happens like in Hawaii. That's where we store a lot of biological agents in the water, right? Underneath the water where nobody
biological
can get
what?
agents. Some things people have created,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And they won't die. You can't kill them. So the only thing you can do is freeze vault them. And what that means is you put those chemicals in a vault, you sink that vault down in the ocean, right? And that's where it stays.
Are they kind of like, are they viruses that won't die? Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because Hawaii is where they teach NBC school. That's where they teach about chemical biological weapons for the U.S. Army and some of the Air Force and Navy. But that's where they do a lot of their research. Yeah. And so because they have a very safe place to dispose of things, right? In volcanoes, right? Magma, right? You put anything in that magma, it's gone. The bad part is these toxins. Imagine they can't just incinerate it like that, because just one little piece of it gets out, everything's in trouble. Russia has the same issue, but they don't have the layers of protection we do, right? That's why we fired up all those incinerator units that were in the U.S. and built 2 more to burn up all that stuff that people were working on. Right. So
the world, and China's doing it. I mean, obviously, and so these bioweapons, which is what they are. Yeah. And we're playing around with these things, and we're hyping them up. I mean, we're making them worse and worse, and we're mixing them, and we're creating something that's
that's right. That's right.
And then we got to figure out how to protect ourselves by burying them or. What about?
Yeah, because some there's no defense, right? They modularized level 4 bio facilities, which means. If you were a customer and you called up and said, I want something that does this, well, they can pull the genes from this, pull it from that, and just assemble the thing and give you whatever you want. They can do this. So, some pretty bad stuff out there. Plus, nuclear waste. We have an issue with that. Suppose we have an earthquake that that stuff is released in a mountain. In that case, we don't need a nuclear explosion. No. If we had something that would release that's why earthquakes catch my attention. That's why I track magma. That's why I track volcanoes, because nobody should be in those areas if there's danger to a place like that. West Virginia is the same thing. They have very toxic agents in the Appalachian Chain Mountains, right? A lot of people, they just don't know that. And so
they're storing
these things? These things are coming out.
They're storing byproduct of nuclear energy or what have you deep in the Appalachian Mountains.
That's chemical. That's where they take some of the bad chemical stuff and store it in there.
I know a guy who's a truck driver who drove. He didn't know what he was hauling. He would never be allowed.
It could have been nuclear. It could have been nuclear waste. They probably. I'm sure they have that too. But a lot of it's chemical. A lot of it's biocontaminants. They put it in. But my point is, Pascal, what is something geologically, like Texas happens in a few more places, and just so happens to hit that spot? Well, in it's only a matter of time.
It's going to happen.
This is without war. This is without starvation. Without dealing with government. All by its lonesome, the Earth is changing right before people's eyes, and I can almost guarantee that they, sometimes they'll get their eye fixated on one thing, forgetting, they may be living atop something else. The So those areas, that's why, where they have these laboratories and things like that, and those are areas to watch, certainly in this day and age.
Yeah.
Areas to watch.
Yeah. Mind blowing, folks. A lot of mind blowing information here. But what? So this is another reason, Mike, that with the binary system going by, and the effects it is to the sun and to our planet as well as all our planets, and with all the debris coming and magma moving around, and the changes in the earth, and us playing around with all this dangerous stuff, and we're storing it here and storing it there. At some point, an accident from the Earth's expansion, something's going to give. There's going to be an accident, right?
It will. It will. And when it happens, the people who are not positioned past, I've seen this too many times. When something happens, a person does not expect, and there are lots of casualties.
Yeah.
One of the first things a person will do is start acting just like a heathen again. In other words, if they're not standing on their faith right now, if their trust is still in humanity, is still in some person out there, they have already messed up, because they can't, when something happens that's really tough, really bad. Some of these people, when something fails them, they give up on everything. And faith and Christ is what, if somebody gives up on Christ, there is a real concern that can be it. That could be it. But that's one thing they don't want to do. But if they know about these things, if they know there is a potential for this to happen, and they're not willingly ignorant about it. Ignorant means not knowing. Everybody out there listening, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means
it means you don't
want to listen.
You just don't know.
They don't know. But if they did know, right, versus the person that does not, when it does happen, they'll say, oh, no. Let's keep steady. Calm down. They can be a voice of reason in a very chaotic time, right?
Right.
A voice of reason. And so it's just like the spiritual things that the U.S. has, like the Statue of Liberty, which is actually Inanna. You know who that is, right? It's Inanna.
No, who is it?
The coat. Okay. Real brief. Let me just, real brief. The Statue of Liberty, of course, is in New York.
Right.
It was designed by this Frederick guy who was a French sculptor.
He was a Frenchman, right?
But the idea came from the Civil War era of Valet, which was a Freemason who desired to create their favorite goddess, right? There are two of them built. Now, the Statue of Liberty looks just like Inanna from the Sumerian artifacts. Because you have this figure. The Romans borrowed Inanna and called it Libertes, right?
Liberté.
Liberté. The Babylonian goddess for that same thing is Ishtar, right? The Egyptians called her Isis.
Wow.
It's the same thing. And guess what the meaning, the original meaning that one Freemason, the Valet guy, he knew it meant what all that stood for. It stands for personal freedom. That's what she stands for.
Okay. Personal
freedom. But that's incomplete, because what she stood for in Roman times? Listen to this. In Roman times, it was a goddess, but it was called the mother of harlots. Listen to this, because it was often worshipped by women who were freed from jail, who had no job to go to. And so it was about freely earning a living.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So it was the goddess who took care of harlots, because if you were a woman who went to jail and got out, you were coined a harlot anyway, regardless, because you had no husband, you had nothing, and you messed up in society. So they called it a harlot. And then this thing from in Babylonian times, it was the goddess of prostitution.
Yes, it was. And I knew that. And so this is the same goddess. The same goddess thing has taken on different names in different cultures. Right. Yeah.
The feet, the poem, what is that poem they had in the feet? Give me your tired, your poor, and your huddled mass is yearning to be free, right?
Yeah.
That was from Lazarus. That was Emma. Emma Lazarus was her name. The 1883 poem. Guess what Ishtar has? Guess what Aphrodite for the Greeks has? Guess what Isis has? They have tablets at the base of her feet, which stands for the rule of law.
Wow.
So does the Statue of Liberty.
Wow.
the rule of law. And so those crowns, those thorns on top, that was to enlighten the 7 continents.
Wow.
Of the earth. That's what it all comes back to.
So
right?
when this French sculptor made this, he knew exactly what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of stuff over here that same way, Pastor Paul, that is what? Worshipped. It's worshipped.
Yeah.
It is worshipped. Because people would kill another person if they hurt that statue. They would kill him. That is their country, that statue is.
Right.
But they don't understand what that statue actually is. And Apollo is her brother. Well, guess what? Apollo, Apollyon, whatever you want to call him.
Right.
He's here in this country too.
Where's he
in
at?
this country? He's in this country. They put him in the Capitol.
Oh, he's in there. They got his statue
He's
in the Capitol.
Listen to me. Apollyon, Pastor Paul, this is the last thing I'm going to say. But Apollyon, right? I mean, yeah. Since when does a president have a skirt and a staff?
Never.
They don't.
Never.
Right?
Never.
Okay. That's all I can say. He's in there. And that's what it actually is. And so you have people who don't understand what these things are.
Right. No,
they
don't.
Really, but the people who run this nation,
they
know exactly,
what they are.
And that's what they worship. And that's what they're doing.
Wow. Folks, Mike from around the world tonight. Really great information and some stuff that's been hidden in plain sight. Stuff hidden in plain sight. And they don't want to teach and let people know what these idols are, and which that's what they are. They're idols. And they represent spiritual principalities that have been given authority over certain parts of our country. And it brings destruction. It's all it does. It brings destruction and poverty and a lot of other things. So
it does. That's one of the reasons they got rid of the one guy, because the one guy didn't like him.
Yeah.
And he was, he's one of those, I'm going to go tell it on the mountain and be free of this stuff. They didn't like that. They didn't like that.
No.
So,
well, let me ask you, Mike, now next Thursday night is Thanksgiving. Do we want to do a show? Would you be available for that, or do we need to change?
Yeah.
You'll be all
I'm
right?
available.
Okay.
I'm available.
You are?
I'm good to go.
So am I.
I'm available.
All right, then we'll see you, Lord willing, next Thursday night, Thanksgiving evening. And by the way, can't wait to see this map that you're putting together on December 2nd, folks. And I'll have to figure out when I'm going to film you, Mike, before December 2nd, of course. So
we'll figure it out. Okay. We'll get that figured out.
Okay. Folks, Mike from around the world. Mike, appreciate it again for coming on, being with us. Blew my mind, but I'm glad you did it.
Well, God bless you, Pastor Paul. I hope it helps. I know some things are hard to believe, but I do. I hope it helps. I hope it turns out to be helpful.
I think.
God bless you, Pastor Paul.
Thank you so much, brother.